Everyone, my presentation is whether it can ever be ethical for a sport manager to override established termination policies if doing so is in the best interest of the organization. In this presentation, I'll explain why this issue is so controversial, share examples from real sport cases, connect it to ethical leadership theory, and then briefly cover the opposing view before closing with a few discussion questions. Imagine being an athletic director who hears credible reports that a coach is mistreating players but has no formal proof. By policy, you can't terminate the coach without documentation, but if you wait, more harm could occur. This is the kind of ethical dilemmas sport managers may face. Policies are meant to ensure fairness and consistency, but sometimes they limit a leader's ability to act responsibly. My position is that it can be ethical to override policy in these rare but serious cases when doing so protects people or the organization's integrity. My first point focuses on ethical leadership and moral courage, the idea that leaders have a responsibility to act when system or rules fail. Brown, Tavino, and Harrison describe ethical leadership as modeling integrity and taking responsibility for the welfare of others, especially when systems or policies fall short. A major example of failed ethical leadership occurred at Penn State University in 2011. The school's legendary head football coach, Joe Paterno, had built one of the most respected reputations in all of sport. But that legacy was destroyed when it came out that his former assistant coach, Jerry Sandusky, had been abusing minors for years, and that Paterno may have known about it but didn't act. As Schneider explains on page 436, Paterno's lack of inaction was immoral. He not only could have saved his legacy and reputation by acting promptly, but more importantly, could have saved many young persons from Sandusky's criminal inactions. This case demonstrates the danger of moral silence. Paterno's inaction allowed harm to continue. This case shows that leadership requires moral courage, standing up for what's right when policy or reputation get in the way. My second point focuses on duty versus compliance. Policies are there to guide decisions, not replace moral responsibility. DeSensei and Rosenberg argue that sport managers have a duty of care, an obligation to protect athletes and uphold fairness even when the rules are unclear. A strong example is the Larry Nassar scandal involving Michigan State University and USA Gymnastics. For decades, Nassar, a team doctor, abused hundreds of young athletes under the guise of medical treatment. For many victims had reported their concerns, but their complaints were often ignored or lost in bureaucratic systems. This case shows how strictly following procedure can become an ethical failure. Policies are meant to guide, not replace, moral reasoning. Managers must be willing to step beyond the paperwork when human well-being is at stake. Doing the bare minimum legally doesn't mean doing what's right ethically. The third point ties directly to moral courage and preventing greater harm. Kidder defines moral courage as doing the right thing even when it carries personal or professional risk. In the Larry Nassar case, a few individuals, survivors, journalists, and advocates, went outside the procedure to expose the truth. According to the BBC, their persistence uncovered a decades-long pattern of abuse and led to Nassar's conviction. Their actions also prompted nationwide reforms in athlete safety and reporting standards. They risked public scrutiny and personal backlash, but ultimately protected others and restored credibility to an organization that had lost public trust. Sometimes the ethical choice requires breaking from a flawed system to prevent greater harm and restore integrity. According to Schneider, some argue that overriding policy is never ethical, even with good intentions. Schneider argues that bypassing policy can cause long-term harm. Once one rule is ignored, others may be too, weakening trust and consistency. He also warns that relying on rumor or informal judgment can harm innocent employees. These are fair points, but I think they assume every policy works perfectly and every leader is acting selfishly. In reality, some policies fail to protect people, and ethical leadership sometimes means stepping up when the system doesn't. To conclude, ethics in sport management is about responsibility, not blind compliance. Some decisions take courage and integrity, the foundation of ethical leadership. However, as Schneider emphasizes, consistently bypassing can create bigger ethical problems over time. The goal isn't to throw out policy, it's to recognize when policy and morality conflict and to act carefully, transparently, and for the right reasons. So the real challenge for sport managers is finding that balance, protecting fairness while still having the courage to act when doing nothing would be immoral. My discussion questions for this presentation are: do you think the long-term effects of overriding termination policies are positive or negative? Should managers be punished for breaking policy ethically? And what part of the presentation stood out to you the most? Thank you.